This August, cybersecurity threats have reached unprecedented levels. With millions of domains at risk, critical vulnerabilities in widely used software, and nation-state hackers unleashing new weapons, your data, your privacy, and even your identity hang in the balance. Are you prepared for what's coming? In this video, we will uncover how the personal data of over 2.7 billion Americans was leaked and much more. August started with the revelation that over 1 million domains are currently at risk of a devious attack known as the sitting ducks domain hijacking technique. The joint analysis by Infoblox and Eclipsium has uncovered that over a dozen Russian Nexus cybercriminal groups are actively exploiting this weakness in the domain name system. Unlike other domain hijacking methods that require complex maneuvers, the sitting ducks technique allows attackers to take over a registered domain without even accessing the true owner's account. Despite being known for years, this vulnerability remains largely unresolved. Over 35,000 domains have already fallen victim since 2018, and the number continues to grow. The question isn't if your domain will be targeted, but when. Moving on to our next update that came on August 23rd, that up to 5 million installations of the Lightspeed Cache WordPress plugin are currently vulnerable to an exploit that allows hackers to gain administrator rights and upload malicious files or plugins. This vulnerability was first reported to PatchStack, a leading WordPress security company. They notified the plugin developer and ensured the issue was patched before making a public announcement. PatchStack founder Oliver Sild discussed this with Search Engine Journal, providing insight into how the vulnerability was discovered and its severity. He stated, "It was reported through the PatchStack WordPress Bug Bounty program, which offers bounties to security researchers who report vulnerabilities. The report qualified for a 14,400 USD bounty." Next up was a new zero-day flaw that was discovered in Apache Offbiz, an open-source enterprise resource planning system used by countless businesses worldwide. The vulnerability, tracked as CVE 2024-38856, has a CVSS score of 9.8 out of 10. In the cybersecurity world, that's about as bad as it gets. It allows unauthenticated remote code execution, which simply means that an attacker can run any code they want on your system without even needing to log in. But wait, it gets worse. This vulnerability is actually a patch bypass for a previous flaw that was supposedly fixed just 2 months ago. It's a reminder that there is no such thing as a permanent fix. Every patch, every update, is just another move in an endless chess game against relentless adversaries. Now, let's shift gears and talk about a major incident that affected millions of users worldwide. CrowdStrike, a leading cybersecurity company, recently experienced a global system outage that crippled Windows devices across the globe. This was a full-blown crisis that left countless systems vulnerable and IT teams scrambling for answers. The incident, dubbed Channel File 291, was caused by a constant validation issue in CrowdStrike's Falcon Sensor software update. It's a classic case of how even the protectors can sometimes become unwitting threats. The problem arose when CrowdStrike introduced a new template type to enhance visibility into novel attack techniques. However, as often happens in complex systems, this well-intentioned update ended up causing more problems than it solved. In another significant development, a critical remote code execution vulnerability in Microsoft Edge has been discovered, potentially allowing attackers to take control of affected systems by executing arbitrary code remotely. This flaw, identified as CVE 2024-38210, affects Microsoft Edge stable versions before 128.0.2739.42 and has been rated important by Microsoft. To exploit this flaw, an attacker would need to either log on to the target system and run a specifically crafted application, or convince a local user to open a malicious file, often through phishing or social engineering tactics. Microsoft has addressed this security issue in its latest update, and users are strongly advised to update to Microsoft Edge Stable version 128.0.2739.42 or later to mitigate the risk. Meanwhile, Halliburton, one of the world's largest energy companies, has shut down some of its internal systems following a cyber attack earlier this week. The company is working to identify any effects of the incident, and while there are no indications that energy services are impacted, the situation highlights the ongoing risks to critical infrastructure. Now, let's dive into the murky waters of kernel exploitation. Researchers have unveiled a new Linux kernel exploitation technique called slupstick. For those who aren't knee-deep in technical jargon, think of this as a skeleton key for the core of Linux systems, and it's as dangerous as it sounds. It can turn a limited heap vulnerability into a full-blown arbitrary memory read and write capability. In simpler terms, it gives attackers the ability to read and manipulate any part of a system's memory. The thing that makes slupstick particularly insidious is its reliability. Previous techniques in this realm had success rates of around 40%. It boasts a success rate of over 99%. The researchers even demonstrated slupstick on recent versions of the Linux kernel, exploiting 9 different security flaws discovered between 2021 and 2023. After this, a widespread malware campaign was uncovered, targeting users of Google Chrome and Microsoft Edge. The campaign has already affected at least 300,000 users, and that number is likely growing as we speak. The malware masquerades as popular software like Roblox FPS Unlocker, YouTube add-ons, VLC media players, and even password managers like KeePass. Once installed, this Trojan sets up shop in your system, creating scheduled tasks that execute PowerShell scripts. These scripts then download and run additional payloads from remote servers. Moving on to our next update, we dive into stealthy backdoors. Researchers have uncovered a previously unknown backdoor named MessyPatch, which was used in a targeted attack against a university in Taiwan. It uses DNS traffic to communicate with its command and control server. The backdoor exploits a recently disclosed critical flaw in PHP, which is CVE 2024-4577, which allows for remote code execution. MessyPatch is unique because it communicates with its command and control server via DNS traffic, making it difficult to detect. The backdoor installs itself as a dynamic link library in critical system directories and uses DNS tunneling for command execution. This method allows the attacker to issue commands and control the compromised system without raising alarms. The origins of MessyPatch remain unknown, but its sophisticated design suggests it's the work of a well-funded threat actor. In other news, a China-linked cyber espionage group known as Velvet Ant has been exploiting a zero-day vulnerability in Cisco and XOS software to deploy custom malware on network switches. This vulnerability, tracked as CVE 2024-20399, was discovered during a forensic investigation by cybersecurity firm Signia and promptly reported to Cisco. The group has been operating for about 3 years, exploiting network vulnerabilities and targeting inadequately protected network appliances for long-term access. Cisco has released software updates to address the issue, and customers are strongly advised to apply these patches promptly. Now, let's turn our attention to a vulnerability that's putting over 100,000 WordPress websites at risk. The popular Give WP donation and fundraising plugin has been found to contain a critical security flaw that could allow attackers to execute malicious code remotely. This vulnerability has a CVSS score of 10.0, the highest possible severity rating. The flaw, tracked as CVE 2024-5932, affects all versions of the plugin prior to 3.14.2. It's a PHP object injection vulnerability that allows unauthenticated attackers to inject a PHP object via the give_title parameter. In this attack, an attacker could potentially execute malicious code on the server, giving them complete control over the affected website. They could steal sensitive data, deface the site, or even use it as a launchpad to attack other systems. Many nonprofit organizations and charities rely on GiveWP for their fundraising efforts. A successful attack could not only compromise their operations, but also erode public trust in online donations as a whole. Let's discuss a vulnerability that's hitting close to home for millions of internet users. Google recently patched a high-severity security flaw in its Chrome browser that was being actively exploited in the wild. The vulnerability, tracked as CVE 2024-7971, is a confusion bug in the V8 JavaScript and WebAssembly engine. For those not familiar with browser architecture, V8 is the engine that powers Chrome and other popular browsers like Microsoft Edge and the desktop version of Brave. This vulnerability was particularly concerning because it was being actively exploited before Google could patch it. This means that malicious actors were aware of the flaw and were using it to attack unsuspecting users. Then, there was another vulnerability that put millions of WordPress sites at risk of takeover attacks. A critical flaw has been discovered in the Lightspeed Cache plugin, one of the most popular WordPress acceleration plugins with over 5 million active installations. The vulnerability, tracked as CVE 2024-28000, is an unauthenticated privilege escalation flaw. In simpler terms, it allows any visitor on your website to gain administrator-level access without needing any credentials. The root cause of this vulnerability lies in the plugin's user simulation feature, specifically a weak hash check in versions up to and including 6.3.0.1. It's a stark reminder that even well-intentioned features can become security liabilities if not implemented correctly. Moving on to our final update. We have a massive data leak. A hacking forum leaked almost 2.7 billion records of personal information for people in the United States. The leaked data allegedly comes from National Public Data, a company that collects and sells access to personal data for background checks, criminal records, and private investigations. The exposed information includes names, social security numbers, all known physical addresses, and possible aliases. The threat actor behind this leak, known as USDOD, initially attempted to sell this data for $3.5 million. However, it seems they have now decided to release it for free on hacking forums. This means that this sensitive information is now potentially in the hands of countless malicious actors around the world. What do you think? What steps do you think companies and governments should take to protect our personal data better? Share your thoughts in the comments below, and don't forget to subscribe to the channel.